Hey, 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 welcome everybody. Thank you for joining tonight's live webinar, Chapter 7 Bankruptcy and Your Fresh Start in 2025. It's never too late for a fresh start. I'm Ben Jackson, one of the co-founders of Upsolve, and if you're tuning in, chances are you're feeling really overwhelmed, whether it's by credit card debt, credit card bills, collectors calling you, student loans, or really just trying to make ends meet in general, because let's face it, things are not getting any cheaper out there. So I want you to know if you're struggling with these things, you're not alone, because bankruptcy, which is what our nonprofit Upsolve helps with, has helped millions of people get a fresh start. It honestly helped me too, because about 9 years ago, I had a small business collapse and I was buried under $60,000 of credit card debt. That would have been a lot for anybody, but I was only making $20,000 a year driving for Uber and Lyft, and I ended up on food stamps. I felt really, really ashamed and honestly like I had failed. Now, filing for bankruptcy changed everything. It gave me a second chance, and eventually it led me to law school and to co-founding Upsolve to help other people find that same relief, because bankruptcy didn't ruin my life. It saved it. And the fact that more people don't know about it is honestly like a national disgrace. So tonight's webinar is all about giving you the clarity and confidence you need, especially if you're asking yourself, is bankruptcy right for me? Like, could this be the way that I could get out of debt? And we're going to talk about that and a couple of other things. So just to give you a quick overview, we're going to talk about who qualifies for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, what happens to your student loans if you file Chapter 7 bankruptcy, how you can file without a lawyer and save yourself thousands of dollars in the process, what you can expect will happen to your credit after you file, some common filing mistakes, and more importantly, how to avoid those mistakes, and how Upsolve can help you file bankruptcy for free if you're eligible and interested. Now, we're going to be answering live questions throughout the whole session, just like we always do, so drop them in the chat anytime, and let's get started. So enough out of me. I am thrilled to introduce Upsolve's Director of Bankruptcy, Claire Robinson. Claire has helped thousands of people file for Chapter 7 bankruptcy through Upsolve. She knows the process inside and out, and more importantly, she understands the emotional weight that comes with financial stress. So she's here to help you figure out what's best for your situation. So Claire, welcome to the webinar. And what is Upsolve, and how does it help people with bankruptcy?
Yeah, thanks so much, Ben. So excited to be here. So Upsolve is a nonprofit that helps people file for bankruptcy for free. So because we're a nonprofit, we are offering a TurboTax style guided interview that asks you all of the questions you need in order to fill out your bankruptcy process. The Upsolve software will guide you step by step through that process. And at the end, you'll have filled out bankruptcy paperwork that you're ready to take to the courthouse and file. Once you file, we'll guide you through what that process looks like after filing until you get your fresh start with Chapter 7 bankruptcy.
Claire, you'll not be surprised to hear I am not as smart as I look. Assume that I don't know what bankruptcy is. What is Chapter 7 bankruptcy, and why should I care in the first place?
So Chapter 7 bankruptcy is a legal process that allows you to discharge debts, which means wipe out your legal obligation to pay them. So when you file Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which is just filling out a bunch of forms and taking them to the court will evaluate your case. And if you qualify, will grant you a discharge of those debts, which means they're wiped out. You no longer have to pay them and you have your fresh start.
Okay, gotcha. So it's kind of like a reset button, which is crazy. Like, why does that exist? It seems like something that creditors and like the government wouldn't want. Like, why is this here, and why do more people not know about it?
Yeah, so bankruptcy is a legal tool. Corporations use that legal tool. Individuals can also use that legal tool. Chapter 7 bankruptcy is probably the closest thing we have to a government reset button for people who are struggling. But most people never find it because the system hides it behind lawyers and paperwork and complicated terms and procedures. But many more people should consider bankruptcy than actually file. It isn't a shameful thing or a scary thing. It's very achievable, and it is such a powerful tool to get back on your financial feet.
Yeah, I remember when I filed bankruptcy, like the level of fear that I felt for like the 2 years before I did it to the like total letdown and like that was it. Like when I actually filed it, because it was so much easier than I expected it to be once I got the darn forms done, that I wish that I had done it years sooner. I don't know. I know you've worked with thousands of people. Is that a pretty common experience?
It's incredibly common. there's a lot of stigma in our society around filing for bankruptcy and the shame that many people experience around their financial
Mm,
situation, and the fear of what might go wrong when you involve yourself in a court process is extremely common and also not necessary. We've
mm,
seen so many people go through this process successfully, easily,
mm,
and become happier and more fulfilled and more empowered in their lives afterwards. So, while it can feel scary to even consider bankruptcy or take the first step towards the process, you're not alone. Thousands of people have done this, thousands of people do it every year with Upsolve. And it's a really powerful lifeline to build the life that you want to have and the financial
mm.
future you want for yourself.
Well, I think the obvious answer to this question is just because it's awesome and works really well. But why do you do this work, Claire? Like, what pulled you into this?
So, working at Upsolve is my life's dream. It was my dream job when I got it. It is my dream job every single day. Um, for two reasons. One is it's really meaningful work. I absolutely love that I get to spend my days thinking about complex problems and how to help people navigate them. It's also so important to me because I too was
Mm,
in financial distress, and
mm,
I know the shame and the fear that people experience when they're in that position. I remember a conversation that I had with a friend when I was unable to work and really
mm.
struggling. And she said, "You should go apply for food stamps." And I will never forget the amount of
Wow.
guilt and shame
Yeah.
and disappointment that I felt in that moment.
Hmm.
So I know what this is like, and I'm so committed to my life and my career being about helping other people in those
Hmm.
moments navigate that and do it in a way that's not so scary or overwhelming.
Yeah, I love that. I bet there are a lot of people like you and like me, because I know this is how I felt with food stamps. I was like, this is for someone else, not for me. And then you're like, but the math just doesn't work. And it's such a hard thing to get over. Thanks for sharing that. So, when it comes to bankruptcy, we talked a little bit about the process earlier. You said it's this financial reset button, which I love that idea. I love that it's built into the law and that we can use it. It sounds like there's a fairly complex process. So, is this something I'd be better off working with a lawyer on? Can I do this on my own? Talk me through this a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a legal process, which means that there's a lot of paperwork, there's complex legal terms, and it can feel really intimidating to go through that process on your own. But at the same time, a lot of people, when they start researching bankruptcy, they see how much attorneys cost, which is $1,500 to $2,500 for a simple Chapter 7 filing. When
Wow.
you're already in debt and you're already struggling, that cost can feel insurmountable.
Yeah.
That's why we built Upsolve and why we continue to improve the tool to this day. Is we don't want filing for Chapter 7 bankruptcy to be expensive or
Mm,
complicated. So, our free software will guide you through step by step. You can ask any questions you have along the way. It's completely free. And you can rest assured that thousands and thousands of people have successfully gone through this process with Upsolve before. It's not scary. You can do it.
I love that. So, got a question from the audience that we'll tackle now because I think this fits here. Let's talk a little bit about what Upsolve's team does with the bankruptcy petitions that come through and what people should expect in general in terms of review time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So, when you go through Upsolve's guided interview, the Upsolve software generates your bankruptcy paperwork for you. We want the process to be really easy and we want the process to be really safe. So, after those documents are generated, our team of paralegals does a check of those documents to see if the software made any errors as it was generating your forms. It depends on your specific circumstances and what software glitch may or may not have occurred in that process. But typically, the process takes 1 to 2 weeks. Once that process is done, you will get your packet of
Mhm.
documents and instructions for filing, and then you'll be able to file that in the court.
Gotcha. And I should mention Claire is so close to the bankruptcy tool because she's always working on it. I think sometimes software glitches seem more more common than they are. Claire, do you know on average what the success rate of somebody who goes through the Upsolve tool is?
It's about 97%.
So not
So
that
when I
many
say
software glitches.
not that many software glitches, I'm a perfectionist. We've got a lot of
Yes.
perfectionists on the team. This tends to be small things like a missing decimal point or
Mm.
a font that isn't quite correct. It's not anything big or scary to be worried about, but we always want to do that final review just to make sure that everything looks squared away.
So I'm thinking about bankruptcy. I've been struggling. I'm getting collectors that call me. I'm looking at the math. It doesn't add up. How do I know if it's the right time to file? And what would you advice would you give me if I was unsure about that?
Yeah, this is a really good question. This is probably one of the most common questions that we receive. Um, Most people wait too long to file. As I mentioned earlier, bankruptcy is a legal right, it's a process that you have access to. What we often see is that people are uncertain or they're scared. And what happens is they continue in this spiral of debt, trying to make payments that they can't afford. They drain their
Mm,
401k, they ruin their credit even more, and a lot of times they also sink into depression, feeling
mm.
like
I
their
know I did.
financial
Yeah.
situation means failure. Um, that is what the creditors want you to believe. They want you
Yes.
to think that bankruptcy is not a tool you should access, that bankruptcy means shame and it means you did something wrong.
Hmm.
That's not correct at all. Corporations file bankruptcy all the time. It's in the law. It's a right that you have, not a bad decision. In fact, it's often the most responsible decision because it's allowing you to get back on your feet, feed your family, go have some
Mm.
fun, go to the movies, do the things that you should do for yourself, for those around you, and for society at large. So it's not a failure. It is a step to freedom,
Mm.
and it is often the most responsible financial decision you can make.
Yeah, and I threw this up in the chat. Truth Futurist just said even the president went bankrupt many times. So yeah, no, it's you can go bankrupt and become president. I think Abe Lincoln, same thing. Wasn't also Thomas Jefferson, Henry Ford. I know for sure Abe and Henry Ford, but
Yeah.
there's success on the other side of it for sure. So I love this one. I'm going to throw this up to you. Dave Ramsey told me not to file bankruptcy. Who should I believe?
How controversial should we get here? Uh,
Yeah. How controversial do you want to be?
So there are many great financial influencers out there. One thing that you might hear in the subtext of what Dave Ramsey says is that debt is a moral obligation, not just a financial
Mm,
obligation. Um, we don't believe that at Upsolve. We think that you have a right to use every tool that's given to you
mhm,
in those creditor relationships or by the government through bankruptcy.
mhm,
The important thing is to evaluate not whether bankruptcy is morally correct or morally wrong, but whether it's a good fit for your
mhm,
individual circumstances. What we find is that when most people who are struggling run the numbers, they realize that bankruptcy is their only or their best financial option. That's your responsibility to do the thing that's right for you and your family, not what's right for Chase Bank's bottom line or
yeah,
a financial influencer that tells you
mhm.
what they think you should do.
Yeah, and I remember when I was thinking about bankruptcy, one of the things that I realized, 'cause I was actually somebody who very much believed that I did have a responsibility to repay that debt at the time. I think regardless of what Upsolve thinks or Ben thinks or Claire thinks, if you're somebody who, like me, felt like you do need to repay that, to Claire's point, I think you come to a point where you do the math and you say, this isn't possible. And actually, I'm doing more harm to and like preventing myself from contributing to society, preventing myself from taking care of my family by trying this forever. And there's so much benefit and so much positive that I can add on the other side of getting out of debt that like the moral calculus kind of flipped for me. So if you're somebody that thinks that way, I would encourage you think like, what is this keeping me from? Like, what is this debt making so that I can't do as a provider or as a citizen or whatever it is? Because it often does get in the way. Truth Futurist wants us to know again: many presidents, many bankruptcies. Yes, it is definitely something that the rich and powerful often use.
Yeah.
Um,
One thing to that last point that I want to add, Ben, is think about what those dollars that you're sending to the creditors
mhm,
mean to them versus you.
yep.
Um, these banks that you owe your credit card bill to, these large hospitals that you owe your medical bills to, they have very sophisticated accountants that know
Hmm.
that not everyone is going to be able to pay those bills
Hmm.
back. And they build their financial models around that. So where
Yep.
that $50 check to your credit card statement might be the difference between food on the table or not for you, it is drop in the bucket for them. So the
Yep.
calculus is really different.
Yeah, and I just love this point, so we're going to belabor it even more. Let's say you do think that you owe the credit card companies $15,000 that you spent. Let's say that's something you really believe. The average person repaying $15,000, making minimum payments, pays $135,000 in total. So maybe you owe them 15,000, but do you owe them 135,000? I don't know. Like, there's a lot of different ways to think about this. And if you do that thinking and you decide bankruptcy is for you, that's definitely something that Upsolve can help you do and help you do it for free. So let's say we decide, Claire, that we want to file. What's the very first thing we should do?
You should go to upsolve.org and see if you're a good fit for our free Chapter 7 filing tool.
Okay.
But broadly, what you're going to want to do is start by gathering the documentation that you're going to need to fill out your forms. The Chapter 7 bankruptcy forms are fairly long. As I mentioned earlier, Upsolve tries to make that process as simple as possible, but you're going to make it so much easier on yourself if you gather the information you need
Okay.
up front. Usually, what that looks like is the last 60 days of your pay stubs, the last 2 years of your tax returns, the last few months of your bank statements, and then any letters or notices that you have from creditors.
Okay.
If you do use Upsolve, will help automate you gathering some of this
Cool.
information, but it's a good idea to just have the documents in front of you when you sit down to get ready to file.
Got it. So this will kind of tell me, you need to find these things. This is what they look like. This is where you can get them, things like that. So what happens if I have questions as I'm going through this?
So there's several ways you can ask your questions. We always have a human support team available to you, two absolutely fantastic paralegals that are incredibly knowledgeable and also really kind humans that know how stressful this process can be and really want to support you through it. We also have a new addition to the Upsolve tool, which is an AI assistant that you can ask questions to while you're going through the process. One thing that's really exciting about this tool is that it can see what's on your screen. So if you
Cool.
get stuck, you can ask it how to move forward, and it'll be able to tell you what isn't working, what error you're seeing. And you can also ask any questions about bankruptcy generally as well.
Cool. So I'm thinking about when I filed bankruptcy, the thing that most kept me from it, other than sort of thinking about, the shame or my personal responsibility or whatever, was having concerns about how like filing bankruptcy would affect my property. So I was an Uber driver, right? Like that was where my money came from. And the thing I was most afraid of was I'm going to lose my car and then I have no way to earn money at all. So like, can I ask questions like that? Like what happens to my car? What happens to this sort of thing? Like my 401k, things of that nature.
You can ask pretty much everything about Chapter 7 bankruptcy.
Very
The
cool.
way that this chatbot works is that it can read every one of the 2,000 attorney written articles that we have on our website, and it can just provide you a more concise summary of that information.
Very
Um,
cool.
because we have so much content, we've covered a lot of ground here. So if you have a question, it's very likely that someone has had that question before, and the tool will be able to provide an answer.
That's very cool. It's almost like I'm talking to a paralegal, and I don't have to wait for anybody to respond. I really like that a lot. Cool. Well, as we're going through this, Claire, I'm getting some more notices in the chats. Let me just drop them through as questions here. Okay, let me see if I can get this up on the screen. I love Truth Futurist. You're in here. Use your basic human rights and legal exemptions, folks. I love it. What are the most common mistakes that you see during the bankruptcy process, and how can people avoid those with the right prep?
Yeah, great question. Um, the number one mistake that we see is not filing soon enough.
Hmm,
So again, would
interesting.
encourage people to run the numbers, calculate out how filing bankruptcy could improve your financial situation, and don't be afraid to start that process. Many people have been successful before. You can
Mhm,
do it as well. Um, More practically, as people are going through the process, a common mistake is there's a lot of information to gather, and it's fairly easy to leave things out. Maybe a
mm,
creditor that you forgot about, or um, a pay stub that you know lost in your big stack of documents. I have one right here on my desk that's 5,000 different letters in the mail I've gotten. So I understand how easy that can be. um, the Upsolve tool will guide you through exactly what you need.
mm.
And if you do make a mistake, you can always correct it. It doesn't mean that your case won't be successful, but you'll make the process as easy as possible on yourself if you gather everything up front. And then at the end of the process, once you have your forms generated, just reading through all of them and doing a quick double check on if there's anything that you might have forgotten or need to change.
So another question here says, I tried to file and was confused about account numbers. My statement and credit report and your tool all had different account numbers. Oh boy. What do I do here?
Yeah, it's a good question. I wonder what's happening there. Feel free to contact our support team and we can help you with your specific circumstance. And broadly, what you should do is look back on notices that you've gotten from the creditors. You can see them in physical mail you may have gotten,
Mhm,
or log into your accounts online and get the account numbers from those documents.
mhm,
Um, it's okay if there's small mistakes on your bankruptcy forms. Um, when you file, the court isn't trying to nitpick every single piece of the filing. They actually do want you to be able to access this legal right.
hmm,
So it's okay if there's small mistakes, but if you look at the documents you've received, that's probably the most accurate place to get the
yeah.
account numbers.
I was talking to a friend the other day who ran into an issue like this, and what we figured out was the debt collectors and the credit bureaus and the banks sometimes all use different account numbers, and sometimes that account number will change on the credit bureau after the debt gets reported, and so what's on your statements could be different than all of those. And to Claire's point, what worked for him was just saying, "Here's the creditor name, here's the original account number that's on my statement." Here's how much I owed, and they kind of just connect the dots thereafter. Because the important thing is that that creditor gets a notification of your filing of bankruptcy, which may or may not actually require that exact account number from your original statement in order to match. Okay, it's got a couple more questions coming in here. Ooh, this is a really good one. How can I tell if it's the right time for me to file bankruptcy?
Yeah, it's a great question. And Ben, maybe you can speak to your personal experience on
Yeah,
this one. You knew it was the right time to file, and then I'll speak broadly about what we see from our
yeah,
experience.
yeah. For me, it was a math question, right? Like I was paying, I think at the time, like $2,700 a month in interest, right? And like making no debt and the principal, like the main thing that I owed on that debt. And I was making an income 3,000 to 3,500 a month. And like that math just doesn't work, right? Like I was paying rents, I had food that I had to pay for. I was hoping to save money, not able to do that. And there was just no way that I could continue paying that debt on the income that I had. And there was also no way that I could increase that income because I had no extra time in which to work. And what am I going to do? Right. Like Dave Ramsey says, take out another job. Okay. I'm working 60 hours a week. Where's it going to go? Or, okay, go back to school and better yourself. All right. Well, who's going to give me student loans when I have all of this debt? So, like, I was just stuck. And like the math told me I was stuck. But more than anything, like, I just felt hopeless. And I think like if you're at the point where you have thought about it and you've really ground hard, you've done your budget, you've crunched the math, and you're like, I can't get out of this. Like that was a good sign for me that it was time to do something.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Ben. I think that's very reflective of what we see with Upsolve users broadly. There's two key signals that people often find tell them it's the right time to file. The first one is you just can't meet your basic living
Hmm.
expenses by paying all of this debt. Um, you're having to drive 60 hours a week for Uber or take out the second and then the third job, and it's still really hard to pay your bills. So that's one. The other is the emotional piece. If your debt is causing you so much stress that it's impacting the rest of your life, that's also a good sign that it
Mm,
might be the right time to file for bankruptcy. You don't deserve to live under a mountain of debt. You don't
mhm,
deserve to live with that much stress and guilt and shame. And that fresh start, we've seen this from so many upsolvers, thousands of them. When they get that fresh start, it's a life changing moment for them, not just because their debt is wiped out, but because it provides an emotional clean slate
mm.
where they can restart the most important things in their life.
Love that. So, a couple more questions here. Is it true that bankruptcy destroys your credit forever?
Absolutely not. In fact, we often see the opposite, which is that
Mm,
after filing for bankruptcy, people will see their credit score go up because
yeah.
they're no longer behind on all of that debt
Mm,
that they previously owed. Um, Sometimes it can take a little bit of a dip right after you file, but within 6 to 12 months, we see people have better credit scores on average than they did before filing.
yeah, I was one of the rare exceptions that mine actually went down a good amount because I was lucky. Like I saw some real bad problems coming. So my credit score is actually still relatively good because I wasn't super behind, but I knew that I was about to be. So that can be another good signal, right? Like if you don't want to have like a massive hit, sometimes it's better to, do that before your credit starts dropping. But if you're like most people, like a friend of mine I was speaking with the other day is like, "Oh, I couldn't get any worse than this." Like, my credit's already in the tank. And that's what happens with most people is you file and it bounces right back up. And then, a few years later, you can buy a house like the one that I'm in now because your credit can bounce back enough for you to be able to get like decent loans and things in the future. All
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. And this is one of the ways that the creditors try to scare people away from filing bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
It's really common for us at Upsolve to see people go from a 500 credit score to qualifying for a mortgage just a couple of years later. But no one wants to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
They want you to be scared and afraid of what this process might mean. Go look at the real data, not the fear and stigma around this process.
Mm-hmm.
Bankruptcy can actually be a great thing for your credit.
I think this is the first time that I've said this on a webinar, so I apologize if I've kept this from people in the past. But on average, if you file bankruptcy over the next 10 years, you end up $118,000 better off. So think about like what you could do having money like that in your pocket for yourself, for your family, and for your future, because that's really is in reach for most of the people that file with Upsolve. Can I file even if I'm still making minimum payments on my cards?
Yes, absolutely. It is not a requirement to file bankruptcy that you stop making all payments or can't afford to make even the minimum payments. You're still able to file even if you're making those minimum payments right now.
Awesome. Okay. Well, Claire, thanks so much for your time. Before we wrap up, is there one final piece of advice that you want to share with people who are on the fence about filing bankruptcy?
Hmm. I want to reiterate that for many people, filing for bankruptcy is one of the most responsible things you can do.
Mm,
It's often one of the most responsible financial decisions you can make, and one of the most responsible emotional decisions you can
mm,
make. You can go to our website and see some of the stories from people who filed with Upsolve, but they often say how relieved and happy and grateful and fulfilled they are in their
mm,
lives after filing. So many people think this is a setback or a failure. In reality, it's often the opposite. It is the springboard to get you closer to the life that you want. So take the leap. If it's the right thing for you, it could be life changing.
Love that. And if somebody wants to get in touch with you or with Upsolve, what's the best way to connect and get started?
So if you go to upsolve.org, you'll be able to log in and create an account and start the process if you want to. There's also a contact us page. So if you have specific questions about this process, feel free to reach out. Our team is always available. We would love to help.
I love it. I normally would want to end this on that super emotionally resonant end, but we did get one more question from Instagram. So I am going to throw it in here. Mac Pritch, I appreciate you jumping on and dropping this in the chat. So, where can we find resources on student loans being discharged in bankruptcy? We actually haven't talked about that on this webinar before, so I'm glad we got this question.
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's a common misconception that student loans can't be discharged at all in bankruptcy. For a bit of legal context, there's two types of debts in bankruptcy, what are called dischargeable debts and non-dischargeable debts. Dischargeable debts are things like credit cards or medical bills that can be wiped out with bankruptcy. Non-dischargeable debts are things like child support or certain types of back taxes that don't get wiped out in bankruptcy. Student loans can be discharged through a separate lawsuit in the bankruptcy filing called an adversary proceeding. If you qualify, Upsolve's tool can also walk you through generating the paperwork for that process. So it's not a standard part of the bankruptcy filing process, but it is possible. We've helped many Upsolvers successfully go through that process. So I encourage you to check out this article or talk to our team if you have more questions about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Claire, and thank you everybody who joined tonight. I know this is, probably not what a lot of you were expecting to do with your Monday night, but hey, when you're struggling financially, you do things that you don't want to do sometimes. And I hope that this was something valuable to you. I hope you learned a little bit more about bankruptcy and how it can help you get back on your feet so that your Monday nights can belong to you and not to your credit card debt. So we do sessions like this regularly, and we want to make sure you never feel alone on this journey. Thanks again to Claire, to all of you. We will see you again on Monday night or over at upsolve.org if you decide that bankruptcy seems like the right thing for you. Take care, everybody.